The rumours are, of course, that Hugo Ekitike may be on his way to Liverpool. And apparently we face big, and I mean pretty sizable, competition from the likes of Chelsea for this. Clearly, he is a highly rated player. Clearly, his time in the Bundesliga is coming to an end. And clearly, with that price tag, there are only going to be a couple of clubs, a couple of teams, a couple of managers who are going to be in for him, because that's a very high price tag. Do I think he justifies 100 million euro? Honestly, I actually don't. I don't think he's a 100 million euro player. I think he's potentially a 100 million euro player at some point in his career. But at the moment, I think Liverpool will probably be bidding less, and they'll probably be looking to, in the end, fulfill that value if he hits certain goals in his career. I think that's what we're looking at here. I don't think we're looking at a transfer of a player who will just, it's 100 million outright. Unless Liverpool, maybe Liverpool stats guys, I'll defer to them obviously, but I'm just talking about my reading of the situation. Of course, you never know what Liverpool's underlying numbers are saying about Ekitike, but I think what we can broadly take from this is Liverpool are trying to build a very adaptable, hyper-mobile, interchangeable front line. It doesn't need to be exactly the same as PSG. I think that plan will already have been there from last summer. I think Liverpool will have known the players they probably want to target, or the players that they think, well, if we put in a bid here or there, maybe we can get this guy. And they'll have known the system they want to build since last summer, right? That's a pretty, it's pretty standard for football, right? But then it's about who's available. And I think Liverpool, if they're willing to spend 100 million on Ekitike, let's look at some of the other available options, right? I'm sure that they will have looked in on Alvarez again, because apparently there was something that was, maybe we could have done that last summer. I would still be thrilled if we got Alvarez. I think Alvarez is one of those players that if he came to Liverpool, that front line would feel of an elite level. And it would also, again, kind of share some of that burden that we see Salah, possibly Wirtz, if he was signed, shouldering. Because I don't know if Jota or Nunez through the middle, I think that's not going to happen next year. It will happen, but it's not going to happen consistently if Liverpool really wants success. Of course, it also means, I think, that Liverpool know if they are going to be bidding 100 or whatever they're bidding, apparently a bid hasn't come in yet for Ekitike, but if they are in the conversation with these guys, they know broadly what the plan is for someone like Nunez, they know broadly what the plan is for whoever else is going to be leaving relatively soon, and they know that this summer is being sped up because of the Club World Cup. Ekitike is a big prospect, and there will be a lot of people looking in thinking, hey, if we're going to sign a striker this summer, we're going to want him to go to the Club World Cup with us. It's worth paying that extra money for. The great thing for Liverpool is we aren't going to that Club World Cup. Was it invite only? Were we left out of the invite? Did we reject an invite? Were we invited late? Who knows? The point is, Hugo Ekitike very much sits in the shape of a PSG style player, obviously, because of guess what? It's history. On top of that, and the style of play that comes with that, on top of that, I think we aren't trying to recreate that. There is the next style in football, the one that Luis Enrique was ahead of the curve of, the one that possibly you can see at times we were aware of because we were able to play against PSG and try and negate a lot of what they were doing. We were able to compete with that. I think that's very important. And then at the same time, I also think we're looking at a player who this isn't a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. I think, there are plenty of great players and plenty of great strikers, but he's very unique in the assets that he possesses. He's very unique in his height. He's very unique in his ball-carrying ability. I think he makes some poor decisions sometimes, but he's still very young. And I think, you can always improve decision-making. I think Liverpool know that with players like Mo Salah and Mane and those kind of guys. They improved their decision-making as they went. And you can see the players who kind of get a little bit lazy or don't increase their decision-making output because they tend to fade away in this Liverpool side, or they tend to leave in the end. The point is, what we have to do in this squad now is shift the creativity down the field. Trent, we aren't going to replace Trent. You're never going to do that. There's a once-in-a-generational player, but also once-in-a-generational players, they end up leaving at some point, or things move on, or they get injured, or whatever, or they don't serve the purpose. Trent was very unique to the era of Klopp, and what he did for us was very unique to the era of Klopp. We were able to maximize that. And I think he was one of the best right backs in the league last year, even though he didn't play a full Premier League season. So you're never going to be able to replace that. With Frimpong coming in, with Kerkez coming in, we need a striker that those guys can play off. That isn't Nunez. That isn't Jota. We can't play, Wirtz can play through the centre, but we can't consistently play him there as someone that people can play off. mainly because he doesn't compete for headers. He's not a header. He's just not an aerial guy. That's very fair to say. And at the same time, I think with Jota being so inconsistent in terms of injuries, with Nunez clearly leaving, Gakpo, I don't think he'll go through the middle, though if he does, again, good hold-up play, but I want to see someone who's able to compete serially in that area. That's probably Ekitike, even though I don't think that's Ekitike's strongest point, if we're being completely honest. I think you're probably assuming a lot of that height-wise. And then on top of that, I think we just need someone who can be an out-and-out number 9 for us. And I get it, again, he's brilliant at carrying from deep and all those kind of things. But I think what we're going to see is we've got somebody who's got the ability to do that, or at least has those aspects that he can bring into his game, that when he's not carrying the ball from deep, when he's not running onto the ball on the edge of the box, he is a striker. Wirtz is very much a poacher like that. There are times where you see his brilliant two-footed ability for Bayer Leverkusen. You see the way that he's able to finish with his left and his right. Mo Salah, equally that kind of poacher, as well as those other brilliant aspects that he brings to the game. Liverpool are looking for this adaptable, I would say, kind of, how can I put it? Sure, they can play this deep game that we need our number 9 to do. But at the same time, if we need to force a goal, like we did against Brentford earlier in the season, they've got those other aspects. There is a much fuller version of the game coming with Ekitike than what feels like quite a limited amount of the game that we can play at the moment with Jota or with Gakpo or with, of course, Darwin Núñez. Of course, Diaz is still here. I think all of us, with us kind of buying all of these players and bringing in the market for all these players, I think, first of all, these wingers who are leaving, or these strikers who are leaving, know that they probably wouldn't be maximised at the club anymore. And the other aspect of that is they also know that they wouldn't be first choice if they were to stay. Diaz is a fantastic player, but I think Wirtz starts over Diaz. Núñez is a fantastic player, but I think Ekitike starts over Núñez just purely because of what he tactically brings to the team. Jota's brilliant, probably happy to stay and be a fourth choice or a third choice, second choice in that area. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? That's kind of my point here, is I think what Liverpool are getting is adaptable upgrades in each of these areas, or hey, Núñez was meant to be this level, Ekitike is going to be this level, and actually, I guess what my fear is that we're buying kind of Ekitike on the idea that he will be a brilliant player. Of course, he's a brilliant player, but we said the same about Núñez. I think Liverpool fans are a little bit burned by the Núñez experience, and actually, broadly, that was probably one of the only poor calls that Klopp made in his time at the club. Ekitike is a fantastic player. Ekitike is a brilliant ball carrier. He's a brilliant dribbler. He's a brilliant unlocker of defences in playing off other players. Guess what? We're buying other players who are brilliant to play off. And it's exciting to see the prospect that Liverpool have. Not only that, but I think other teams also value him to a very high level. I think Chelsea probably value him to about 70, 80 million pounds. We're probably in a similar range. And even with, people are talking about the 100 million we spent on Darwin Núñez, there have been multiple different areas that we've unlocked that 100 million, or kind of the extra bonuses that we had to pay. And ultimately, Darwin Núñez didn't fulfill a lot of those goals. We fulfilled the goals with him in the team, but he didn't fulfill those specifically. So again, I think it comes down to being kind of driven by that process. And if the club really believe that Liverpool, say we do buy him from Frankfurt, if the club really believe he's a £100 million player, then they will put clauses in there rather than the other way around. I also think what we're finding with teams like Frankfurt, with teams like Leverkusen, with a lot of other sides, we have a lot of valuable assets that can go the other way. You're looking for a central defender. We've got Joel Quansah can go the other way. Cool, that's not like for like, but it's certainly value that we're offering to the other side. Maybe there's a move to Frankfurt or Leverkusen or wherever for someone like Harvey Elliott. Fantastic young player who will probably thrive in the Bundesliga, and probably looks at someone like Wirtz and says, okay, well, this is a definite signal that I'm leaving the club at this point. He probably already knows where he's going. He probably already knows what his value is, all these things. But you get my point. We're offering brilliant players in this transfer market, and we're able to go out there and offer what we consider to be fringe players to other teams who probably would see them as starters. We spoke about this, kind of the brutal rebuild that Arne Slot's doing. It feels so brutal because so many of these people are so talented. It wouldn't feel so brutal if it wasn't such a some of them are very clearly, evidently not talented. Darwin Núñez, clearly talented. Jota, clearly talented. Luis Diaz wants to move on himself, but clearly a talented individual for the things that he brings to any club. The same goes for Harvey Elliott. The same goes for if we move on Tsimikas. There are plenty of people who are moving on this summer. Kwanzaa, Joe Gomez. There are so many people that if we move them on this summer, then we're looking at, first of all, a couple of guys who have been very good for us down the years and have been excellent either backups or starting players. That's really key to note that. But also that Liverpool must feel this level of confidence to either be able to replace those guys or adapt to be able to rotate the squad in a new way. At the moment, I still think we're thinking, because of the constitution of the team, in a Klopp rotational way. And you kind of saw that was dictated by Arne Slot, or to Arne Slot this season, in the players that he could bring on. He only really had Federico Chiesa as kind of another option on top of what Klopp had already got. And then even then, he had a lot of injuries to Klopp's guys. So, hey, who could he bring on? I thought his options were limited, and clearly had that starting 11 he really liked, and then a very weird fringe set of players. I remember a few years ago there was this great story about, I think we will have looked at what Núñez did against people like Villa, where I was there for the away game. The ball just did not stick to him. And I think what we're going to look for is players that we can get the ball to stick to when we put the ball down the field. Long ball, great through ball. Salah's there, or whoever's there. Ekitike will play the ball off differently to Núñez. But at the same time, someone that when we play the ball up, they hold it, give it, hold it, give it. I'm not saying they need to be Dusan Vlahovic, but they need to be a player who has the tactical acumen and ability to play as part of a system. And I think there have been times where that system has been relatively limited by someone like Darwin Núñez. Not because he's not an intelligent guy, not because every now and again he doesn't make brilliant passes or decisions or those kind of things, but purely because I think the profile needs to change in that area in order for Slot's team to thrive and in order to be able to rotate this team around in the way that we need to throughout the season. I think what we're looking at is a summer where we probably decrease in numbers, but increase in talent, concentrated talent in each of those positions, because that's the kind of squad that Slot wants to build. Whether that leads to injuries, whether that leads to a consolidated period of anyone being out because they have to play a high volume of games, I don't know. We've got a World Cup next year, all those kind of things. That's always going to be the variability that we have. But I think what we've had this season is a couple of experiments which I think haven't necessarily gone the way that we wanted them to in terms of success from a fan perspective. But I think what we have seen with Núñez this season is he's not our striker. And by the absence of the skills that he has, we're seeing what Ekitike can bring in. The same goes for Chiesa. I think we're seeing Florian Wirtz arrive because, first of all, we knew that we had that need for that floating number 10 creative style position. And similar to the Ricky Lambert signing a few years ago to prove to a previous manager in the shape of Brendan Rodgers that we didn't need a big man in that shape, even though he then pushed on and bought Christian Benteke, even though we didn't really want Christian Benteke overall at the club. It proved something. It proves that we need those kind of players. And these kind of cheap, I don't want to call Chiesa a test because that doesn't feel fair to him, but these kind of cheaper or more cost-effective options of being able to test something before we actually buy it, I think it shows Liverpool have got this long-term idea and prospect of where it is they're going in the first place. We're not just making it up and going, hey, Wirtz is available, can we play with a 10? That's not the way it works. Same goes for Ekitike. Hey, Ekitike is available. Could he fit as a striker? We've been profiling these guys for years. We've got years of data on them, all these kind of things. Ekitike is an incredibly exciting player. My only question is, if we're going to spend 100 million on him, what would stop us from spending 150 million? By the way, that's more or less double the budget on Isak, 100 million on Alvarez. I think there are multiple options here, but it seems as if Ekitike is emerging as one of those. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, how he plays with all these other players, where he would play. And I still think he's one of those great drop deep players, push into that area, bring Wirtz in, bring Salah in, bring Szoboszlai in alongside him, and not only that, but Kirkes and Frimpong and all these kind of guys. That is a thriving, ultra aggressive front line. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will chat to you guys on this channel later. There's Discord, there's Patreon, and of course there is also Super Chat. And I will chat to you guys in a little while. Much love!